Welcome in, college baseball central fans. Got a special treat for you tonight. We're breaking down all the ACC. This is This Weekend in the ACC with Monty, Micah, and Nick. Guys, how we doing?
I'm living the dream. I'll go first since no one else wants to talk. Yeah, I'm great. I work for a top 25 college baseball team according to you, Jake. So I'm loving it. How's everybody else though?
Monty,
I'm
are you all tapped out on ACC baseball already?
no, I'm great. I'm excited. I'm ready for midweek games tomorrow. Um, yeah, it's been great. We interviewed Coach Pollard today of Duke after his 3-0 weekend. So if you guys haven't had a chance, go and check that interview out. It's on our YouTube. Great interview with a great coach. But yeah, I'm doing great.
I guess we'll start with that Duke team as they
Whoa,
swept.
whoa, whoa,
Sorry,
whoa.
getting ahead of myself.
Wow,
Sorry about that,
Jake,
Nick.
come on now. Come on. I got to talk a little bit.
No, pause. In the defense of you, Jake, Nick doesn't say anything unless you stare at him and say, "Hey, Nick." So it's okay. I would have skipped him too if it makes you feel any better.
Well, Nick got to watch the number one team in CBC, Wake Forest, all weekend, so we're all a little bit jealous of Nick there.
Don't be. I mean, because Wake just mollywopped everybody.
He probably saw half the team today at work.
Yeah, actually, I only saw two players, only two. But no, I had a good weekend. I got to see the opening day for Wake, and then I only got to see 3 innings of yesterday's game because I was working kind of late, and then they mercy ruled. So I saw the 4th through 7th inning of yesterday's game against Akron. But Saturday night, I got to go to the first pitch NIL dinner, which was fantastic. It was honestly an honor to be there because they had Chipper Jones as their guest speaker, which was great. He got to sit up there and take questions, and he chatted with the team before their game against Illinois on Saturday. Got to see all the rings, which were my God, they were like Super Bowl rings. But yeah, I had a great weekend. Caught some state baseball too this weekend. So man, I'm loving it.
I think this is one of the worst weekends too.
What's that?
Well, I was saying you went to 2 Wake Forest games?
I went to 2. So I went to the opening day on Friday, and then I caught the 4th through 7th inning yesterday.
Nice.
So
sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, this is one of the rare weekends where we all saw some ACC teams, as I got to see Notre Dame, Monty, obviously UVA. Micah, we're going to give you, as probably the only one that watched Miami, we're going to give you that one.
I watched some Miami.
We saw our boy Lucas Costello hit a home run.
Yeah.
So we were happy about that. If you haven't listened to that podcast, we interviewed Lucas a couple of weeks ago. So that was fun. I'm happy that he got to hit one over the wall.
Noah's very excited about your sign in the back there, Micah.
Yeah, I thought he would appreciate that. The good life, I miss the good life. So
anyway, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna start with breaking down. Okay, Jake's already on top of it. I was about to hit the button, and with the Kickin' Chicken Classic, I believe is Mike and Nick had deemed it on their show and what we're going with. And I thought we were going with the more zoomed in layout there, Jake.
We'll fiddle with it a little bit. There we go.
No, yeah, don't touch it. Duke had a great weekend. As you can see up there, they swept through the weekend, and let's hear about what you guys thought of some of the performances. We'll start with you, Micah.
Well, I want to cheat the system, and I want to ask a question if I'm allowed to, because I took away from this weekend. It was one of the teams I got to watch the most of because they were able to play at hours that were not normal to the rest of the country, with an 11 a.m. start and a 4 p.m. start on a Sunday. But is it crazy to think that if you were power ranking these teams, obviously we're working on that right now, is it crazy to put Duke as the number 1 team in the ACC after week 1? Like based off power rankings, not like who we think is going to win it all or any of that stuff, just what we've seen through 3 baseball games. Because, I mean, this will help ease us into it. I mean, it was an impressive weekend for Duke. I mean, I don't think there's a team in the country that was more impressive this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think they should be the number one team based on power rankings in the conference based on what they did. Now, if we're talking with the polls, obviously Wake Forest is going to remain number one. They did nothing to lose that spot. But I mean, Jake and I went on your show and we talked about how good Duke's lineup would be, and I think we might have to track back our steps a little bit with how they performed. I mean, 16 home runs. I mean, when we talked to Coach Pollard earlier today, he was talking about how in a way the power numbers kind of exceeded even his expectations. So I mean, you guys had to have been impressed with the offense. I mean, look at the stat line under the top performers there. Just an absolutely bonkers performance by so many of them. I mean, they have 2 guys with 3 home runs already.
Monty, he's not on this list, but I think Wallace Clark, too, was a guy that really stood out to me this weekend as his bat was really struggling at OU, and he seemed to be kind of in the middle of that Duke-Indiana game that I watched. So credit to him for kind of taking a step back and getting back into it a little bit. But again, like Micah said, I think if you take everything and just look at what's happened so far in 2024, Duke has to feel like they had the best weekend in the country. They beat 2 top 25 teams. I know Indiana is not ranked on this site, but I had them ranked, and I think that they're going to be a pretty good team going forward. And then just the mollywop of George Mason that seemed to be a home run derby. I think you have to come away feeling pretty good about this if you're a Duke fan.
Yeah, and by the way, Wallace Clark would have been the next guy on, but I only had for most of the scores here up. We only have 4 players. I managed to fit 5 in here for a couple of the teams that had a lot, but Wallace Clark and I think Devin Obi were right next to making this list. That just making Winslow had a really good day. I mean, that you could have put 9 guys up on the top performers list here.
I mean, they really did make that ballpark feel small too, as well. I know that's probably an easier thing to do, but it really made it feel very small when they played.
This was probably one of the most impressive opening weekends for any team in the country. Honestly, I blogged about this on the site, and just so impressive by Duke. Not only playing 3 former regional teams from last season, but going up against another top 25 team, who, by the way, they played in the regional last year. And I know Coastal was out for blood after they lost last year. So, I mean, just an unbelievable performance. And in my opinion, Duke had the most impressive weekend of anyone in the country. And when it came to power rankings, I mean, it's hard to punish Wake, but I mean, Duke is just, they're already, like, we're out the gates and they're already nipping on Wake's heels. So just an impressive weekend.
Yeah, and Santucci was he started Friday, and that was Coach Pollard said that was the only role they were 100% sure on going into the weekend, that it was going to be Santucci on Friday. And he was a little bit erratic in the first inning, but he settled in really quick and looked really, really good. Him coming back from injury is going to be such a boost to this deep pitching staff. Knowing that he's going to be able to take the ball every Friday night and be one of the best pitchers in the country is a huge, huge benefit, especially with the depth of their bullpen.
Yeah, speaking of their depth of the bullpen, I know we might touch on it, but by the way, again, for those that are watching, make sure you go listen to that interview that Monty and Noah did today with Coach Pollard. You made my 40-minute drive home from work, Monty, quite enjoyable today. It went by pretty quickly. I was so fascinated by, just how smooth of a conversation it was to begin with. But, Kyle Johnson was incredible out of the pen. He makes his debut, goes 3 shutout innings. Obviously Jack Caglione is Jack Caglione, but a part of me got me like really hot and bothered about thinking about what that could be moving forward. Like he might be someone we see as every weekend kind of guy for 3-4 innings, coming in big situations, and then like he'll get Duke out of a jam, then hit a bomb the next half inning to take the lead. Like he's not even on your top performers list. I genuinely think that he may have been the most impressive player throughout the weekend because he looked college ready as a true freshman in his first weekend series.
Yeah, and he was playing right field and DHing. I mean, yeah, he was again, like I could have easily just filled up the bottom of this with Duke performers, because you could also throw Charlie Bielenson in there, who has apparently stepped into the closer role for and I think he went 5 scoreless innings. I think he went 2.1 one outing, 2.2 the other, got both saves against Coastal and Indiana. And that's just crazy, because you thought the two closers were O'Shell and Talon, and now all of a sudden they've thrown Charlie Bielenson back there, and he's been absolutely shut down. So it's getting to be a little bit ridiculous and unfair, because you've added now Kyle Johnson to this list, and it's just unreal. Just really, really amazing pitching depth, and I'm really excited to watch Duke this year.
You know, it's a crazy weekend when O'Shell is one of the most concerning pieces you saw all weekend for Duke, and it wasn't even a bad outing. It was just not what we thought we'd see from him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing we got to remember too, also with when we're talking about this is opening weekend. So they're still going to be experimenting. There's still guys on pitch counts. There's still guys settling in. So the rotations could look very different come next week for certain teams. I know for one that comes to mind is Clemson's Austin Gordon, who was a surprise member that wasn't part of the rotation for opening weekend. He will be. O'Shell, maybe a starter down the road. Coach Pollard mentioned that in his interview. We'll see. They're still working out what the roles are going to be for these guys, but it sounds like Santucci's definitely going to be the Friday night guy, and Bielenson's going to be in that closer role for the time being. So,
and I have one more shout out quickly, just because I got to shout out the SoCon guy. Shout out to Zach Morris. Great, he's obviously on this list, but great performance, the VMI transfer. I'm glad he's not beating up my pitchers at ETSU anymore.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, we were talking a lot in the preseason about, are these guys from VMI, from Harvard, from Penn, which is Ben Miller, are these guys going to be able to produce at the ACC level? And I'd say they've exceeded those expectations.
Glowing reviews, Monty.
Yeah, they lead the country in home runs. So I'd say great job. And and Alex Stone is Alex Stone. So they're looking pretty good there. So we could spend a whole show talking about Duke baseball, but I think we need to move along to another team we could talk a lot about, and that is the Pitt Panthers, ladies and gentlemen. The Pitt Panthers with their first opening series sweep since 2013.
So they're Omaha bound, is what you're telling me.
I was tempted to rank them. I was. They looked really, really good.
Just gritty all around, Monty.
They're gritty. I mean, they were on Flow Sports, I believe, in what looked like a public park in Port Charlotte against Maine, who, by the way, was an NCAA tournament team last year. They played in the Miami regional, Coral Gables regional, sorry. And so this wasn't, necessarily. What are you laughing about?
Me?
Yeah, you're the one going in your mic.
I just think it's funny that we basically had Pitt penciled in to be the worst team in the ACC, and then after this weekend, I mean, they're undefeated. So I guess we need to stop talking.
I believe in that podcast I said I have a feeling this team is not going to finish in the 13 or 14 spot. They're going to make the ACC tournament, and they're not your older brothers. They're not your older brothers Pitt Panthers anymore. So
this is your blue and yellow Pitt Panthers, not your navy blue and gold.
Yeah. Micah, who impressed you?
I mean, again, you can go down the lineup. I'm going to be completely honest, Monty. If you're on Flow Sports, I don't watch you. So it's just a rule of mine. I'm sorry, but I won't pay for Flow Sports. The broadcasts there are brutal. That park, by the way, they're playing. Fun fact, by the way, that park they played at, I've actually hit a home run at. There's your fun fact of the day. I lived in Fort Myers. It's 30 minutes away. We played in the summer, not travel, but adult league I was in. So just saying, I'm very similar to Luke Cantwell. I'm just saying, Well,
he did it twice.
That's true. That is true. But I did it half as many times as him. So I'm just I'm the light version of him. No, I think for me, it might be CJ Funk, honestly. I didn't come in with, the expectation that he was going to be a key part of the lineup like that. I mean, he was consistent all weekend. He had a very good plate discipline. That's something I did notice in the highlights I was able to watch. Shout out to Wheels on YouTube for some of the highlights of that game. I think it was game 1 that he had on there. But I think overall, you have to just kind of talk about the pitching, because you kind of saw pretty consistent pitching from them, which at least for me was the biggest question mark going into the year for them.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Fox out of Gardner Webb coming in the first game of the doubleheader with 2.2 shutdown innings, and I really liked what I saw from Ethan Firevet in the third game. He finished out the game after Sokol went out with, I believe, 5 shutout innings. So the pitching was a lot stronger than I think any of us really kind of anticipated.
Yeah, and I think, Monty, the transition from a lot of these transfer guys that we thought were going to struggle early on, like Luke Cantwell, I think our questions were answered with them. I mean, they came out and really kind of tore the cover off the ball and really took it to, like we said, a main team that was in the tournament last year that probably could have made it a lot closer than Pitt teams in the past. So credit to the Pitt team. I think that this Pitt team is going to be a lot more dangerous than people think.
Yeah, what I really liked is Ryan Zuckerman. They were down 3-2 in the 7th of game 2, and Ryan Zuckerman, the freshman who I put in my conversation for one of the freshman of the year possibilities, which might have been a surprise at Pitt. I think you went as well, Jake, in that direction. But he got his first collegiate hit. It was a double that tied the game, and then of course he got a home run the next day as well. So. Excuse me, his first collegiate hit was a home run in game 2. It was not a double. He tied the game with a home run, and then the double was the next day. My apologies. I just had to double check the notes there. I thought he was really impressive. And then Luke Cantwell, I knew he was going to be a dude. But Nick, what are your thoughts?
I mean, if you're a Pitt fan, you couldn't ask for a better weekend. I mean, for everyone, that is involved with the ACC or covers this or paid attention to last year, we all thought that this was going to be a bottom tier team, 13 or 14. But, when Mike and I previewed this series, we had both picked they'll be happy to be 2-1 coming out of this. But starting off 3-0, man, I mean, not every ACC team can say they started off 3-0, but Pitt can. So they're off to the hot start, which is great. I think the key guy here is CJ Funk. I mean, last year, he was the only guy that was really in the top 10 of any Pitt Panther in the ACC when it comes to hitting statistics when you rank them. I kept seeing his name all year last year, so he's back where he started, if not even better. So you couldn't ask for a hotter start if you're the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, it's exciting for Pitt, and they're going to be a gritty team. I mean, it doesn't matter how poor they are. They're going to grind out some surprises. Jake?
Well, Monty, you can't go 58-0 without going 3-0. So I think that kind of describes this Pitt series the best.
I wish I could have not called on you. But we'll move along to the next.
Monty, before we move on, I just want to say, are you happy that they beat your least favorite logo in all of sports? Because I don't know how much of, obviously you pay attention to the uniforms that Maine wears, but they just have Miami's logo, that good old English M, just in the light blue and navy instead. And I know when we were ranking uniforms, you went on a rant in our group chat about how much you hate that logo. So I think that's why you're actually happy with Pitt right now, is that they just pummeled a team that was wearing that logo you don't like.
Yeah, it's awful. The old English M, I mean, you can barely tell it's an M. It's so, yeah. Just, I don't have time to rant for an hour about this, so we're going to have to move on. But thanks for bringing that up so I can think about it before I fall asleep tonight and stew.
You're welcome.
So moving, you're welcome. So moving along to Xavier and Clemson. I think a lot of people thought Xavier would put up a little bit more of a fight. Clemson was fairly impressive. I thought Billy Barlow, he had a rocky start in game 1, but I thought he ultimately ended up looking a lot better as he settled in. And Aiden Knack got roughed up a little bit on game 3, but I thought the bullpen did a pretty good job there. So I think what we're probably going to talk about a lot with Clemson is their offensive performances. Jake, do you just laugh randomly?
I just get excited thinking about Cam Canarella and Blake Wright.
I was going to say I'm just talking. I just hear you snickering
Same.
into the mic, and I'm just
trying to think of superlatives when it comes.
And
to
you
Cam
laughed,
Canarella.
and you're just laughing to yourself as you think of them.
Yeah.
What kind of like?
I think that this was the quintessential weekend for Clemson. They unveiled, I think, one of the prettiest uniforms in sports and made a slight tweak to it. They had a really pesky Xavier team that a lot of people were really high on, and Cam Canarella hit nearly 500 and really kind of didn't give him a chance in any of the games. Billy Barlow threw 5 innings, no runs, no walks. I think that's going to be the big key here. And again, we're going to run out of superlative. We're going to have to start looking at the thesaurus to talk about Cam Canarella, Monty.
Is that the joke that made yourself laugh?
Yes. I was looking up on the thesaurus power, just like synonyms for power.
Anyway, Micah, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I'm laughing at the idea that they rolled out an iconic jersey. They ruined an iconic jersey, in my opinion, but that's besides the point. I don't want to get on my rant about uniforms. I think my takeaway from this, again, not being able to watch these games live and watching the highlights, is the decision to roll out Aiden Knack in his freshman debut in Game 3. And I'm assuming, and I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this, that was a decision because it's early in the year. Let's, the offense is explosive enough to back him up and help him out. But I didn't really, there was a lot I wanted to see from maybe a Matthew Marshall or go down the list of transfers. I don't know, man. It kind of threw me off a little bit. So I kind of want to know everyone's take on it because for me, again, Clemson is a team I have in my Omaha 8. And it makes me kind of wonder if there's something I'm missing or if it was purely just let's throw the freshman out there because it's early and there's no pressure. Let's just go play ball.
That's a good question because again, Austin Gordon I think is going to slide in here. Mm-hmm. But you have to wonder why Marshall or I'm trying to remember, they had a couple other arms, Ethan Darden, but we also don't know who might be a little banged up either because they don't have to report that because I know I found out at the UVA game they had a couple of guys that were banged up and that's why they didn't pitch. So I'm not sure. I was really excited about their depth, so I was surprised to see a freshman getting the nod on Sunday. But at the end of the day, they did go 3-0. The offense looked really good. I mean, Cam Canarella's hitting over 300 or over 500, excuse me. He just missed hitting a grand slam that would have been bonkers because he would have hit a grand slam in the same game Alden Mathis and Noah Naraki did. But I really liked what I saw from Alden Mathis. I normally didn't put too many times where the guys also walked on the stats here, but he was 4 of 8 and he walked 7 times. And he's hitting in that 4 spot. He might be hitting in the I think it was going Canarella, Taylor, Wright, Mathis, and having your cleanup hitter do that is fantastic. I really impressed by him. The transfer from Richmond, University of Richmond, which is near me, along with VCU, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So, I mean, I thought your stars showed up in Canarella and Wright, and then you saw some really good stuff from the supporting cast.
I love Cam Canarella. He's my guy. He was my player to watch out for. I guess, Monty, when you sent out that Google Doc, which player are you most looking forward to watching this season? Cam was my pick. I mean, and he just showed off this weekend, batting over 500, nearly almost had a grand slam the other day. I mean, there's nothing. If Nick Kurtz didn't exist, he probably would have been my pick to win ACC Player of the Year. I mean, this kid is just electric. Love him. And I did want to address Micah. I find that interesting too, how they rolled out a freshman in Game 3. Usually, now Monty, you bring up a great point. You never know who could be hurt, what's going on, but usually you want to do you put out your true freshman maybe in a midweek game. Like if he's got a ton of potential, roll him out in a midweek game where it's not going to affect the RPI all that much, especially early in the season. But I did find that interesting as well.
Jake, you want
to? Yeah, I think one person that we're kind of glancing over is Jacob Hinderleiter. He played a really great shortstop, I think, for the Clemson team, which is, I think, really what they need. They don't really need another bat. It's just the fact that the stability up the middle, I think, is going to be a very underrated aspect of this Clemson team as well.
what's his name started at shortstop? It was I'm trying.
Oh, was it Hinderleiter?
No, I'm trying to remember the pronunciation. I keep trying to call him Quafo, but I think it's Kifo.
Andrew Quifo, the senior from Georgetown.
He started at short. Hinderleiter got in at third base a couple of the games, but Quafo was playing shortstop.
Monty, it is early, and the jerseys face the other way. So I do apologize when I caught the highlights on that one.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's just they've got depth because they were able to bring in Jack Crichton and Nathan Hall, and I saw a couple of them get RBIs. I saw Jack Crichton making a fantastic catch in the outfield. Will Taylor didn't have the best weekend. I think he got one hit and then had a hit by pitch. I was expecting a lot more from him hitting behind Canarella, but again, this is getting a little nitpicky. Anybody else? We can move on if anybody else doesn't have anything about Clemson.
I think we ran out of superlatives, Monty.
Oh my! I set myself up for that. Let's move on to one that Micah and I would like to talk about for a while, and that is the Virginia Cavaliers. It was an interesting weekend. I was there for all three games. The Virginia offense showed up as expected. But their pitching was a little erratic, and defense had some interesting situations going on. So it was an interesting thing. But for me, what I was really impressed with is Griff O'Farrell is, I think he was either first or second team All-American all the way through every publication, one of the two. And he's known as kind of a he's a singles and doubles kind of guy, and first at bat of game one he blasts one, and then the second at bat of game two he blasts one, and all of a sudden he's doubled his home run total from last season, which, by the way, he didn't hit a home run until the Super Regionals against Duke. That was his first home run, and then he's hit two already this year, so he's added 10 pounds. And if that and he's getting more aggressive with his approach, and if that shows up, on the stat sheet that he's all of a sudden hitting for home run power, you're going to see his draft stock skyrocket from the later first round up to the mid to high first round, especially given the lack of depth in this year's shortstop class. Micah, what did you see from your Virginia Cavaliers?
A lot of frustration for a little while there. I'm not going to lie, Monty. I'm going to be the first one to admit that I'm spoiled rotten after last year's undefeated non-conference season. I don't expect Virginia to ever lose a non-conference game again. That's just a requirement unless it's in Omaha. And even then, I don't expect it there anymore. So it was definitely disheartening. Henry Ford was a huge positive. That was like, I'm trying to convince myself to focus on what type of weekend he had, because we knew he was going to be good. But he looked like an all ACC type kid. That was really great to see. Obviously, the 2 home runs, the double, the 6 RBIs. Again, great plate discipline too. He was battling. You could just tell that he's ready for this level, which was great. But I'm not going to lie to you, Monty. I didn't predict Virginia in my Omaha 8, but you kept kind of seeing it from some of the national sources, like, oh, they're probably going back. There's a good chance they can go back. And after what I saw this weekend from this pitching staff, I know it's early. But the Jay Woolfolk outing to me has me sick to my stomach, because, he quits football. I'm excited. I'm like, oh, you see what he did for Team USA over the summer. You think, oh my goodness, we're going to see this kid, shine. You should take a huge step forward. And again, first outing, I'm not writing him off, but this felt exactly like the end of last season for Jay as well. where when he was out there, you're just every pitch you're sitting there going, where's the big hit? Where's the big hit? Or he can't find the zone. I mean, he goes, he only gives up 2 hits, but gives up 6 earned runs.
Yeah, I mean, he looked filthy when he hit the zone. He looked filthy when he hit the zone. The problem was he was struggling big time hitting that zone, and I was really excited. I thought he was going to be the story of the day. I was already trying to think of post-conference or post-game press conference questions for him, and that had to go out the window. But to touch real quickly back on Henry Ford, I did want to let you know that Oak, he said Ryan Zimmerman was there on Saturday when Ford hit his first home run, and Zimmerman said something along the lines of, I didn't even look like that when I was in MLB. And so he had nothing but high praise for the kid. Apparently he was telling that to Oak, never actually spoke to Ford, because we did ask him in the post game, and Henry Ford was like, what are you talking about? I didn't talk to him. So
did you see Shock's graphic of
with
Henry Ford, the UVA versus Henry Ford?
I actually
Ford
replied.
guy?
I replied to it because for some reason when I've been writing up stuff for Henry, I've been trying to call him Harry for some reason, and there's so many times where I'm like, why am I doing that? I have to like proofread like 4 times to make sure I didn't call this poor kid Harry out of nowhere. I don't know who Harry Ford is, but that name is stuck in my mind when it should be Henry Ford. I think maybe I convinced myself that it can't be the same. It can't be the same as the car guy. But he hit a no doubter for his first home run. Like, he pimped it. Because I was watching, I was like, that's got to be gone, or this is going to be a little bit of an embarrassing moment for him. But, and he basically sealed the deal in game 3 with his 3-run shot there. So he's hitting in the cleanup spot as a freshman. And I was surprised when the lineup came out on Friday when he was in the cleanup spot. And I am not surprised anymore. So,
are you surprised that you didn't see it sooner? Because that's kind of how I felt when I was watching the highlights in it. Because, I mean, he looked every bit. I know that Monty and I had him competing for a few different jobs, and now he seems like a guy that you're going to have to circle in the lineup every time he comes up to the plate.
Yeah, I am surprised I didn't see it sooner, because I was big on him. Because one of the things I had noticed first when I saw him playing, when I saw some clips of him playing for the Charlottesville Tom Sox over the summer, I was like, he's a big kid. Like, he's 6'5". He's got some guns, he's strong. And he's as a freshman, he's a local kid. And that was another one of the cool things, is he's been going to UVA games since he was 6 months old, apparently. He's definitely somebody you have to circle in the lineup. And there's a lot of guys. The UVA lineup's going to be fantastic, 1 through 9. When you got somebody like Bobby Whalen who can go 5 for 9 in the 9-hole spot, and with 3 doubles, you're going to be good. But the pitching, we gotta see about. But I want to hear about what Nick's thoughts are.
Micah, you're not going to like this, but this is this series really did remind me of Georgia Tech last year. Could hit the hell out of the ball, but man, that was disappointing pitching, man. That's about all I got. I mean, you guys pretty much kind of covered it. Griff is a star. Like, I think, Monty, you made a great point. If he keeps hitting the way he is, and in terms of like going into conference play too, you could see his name a lot earlier in the first round of the MLB draft. But yeah, the pitching is concerning to me, especially when you're up against Hofstra. Now, again, like Micah said, it is early, so you never know. They could clean things up for sure, but it's not the same staff that we saw last year.
Yeah, which is crazy, because what they got out of that staff last year is insane. Because, I mean, 2 of those guys were not drafted. Those were graduate level guys
Right.
that just went above and beyond. So you think they'd be able to do something similar with, honestly, more talented, guys in terms of future baseball prospects. But Jack O'Connor, you have to get better from him. He's supposedly going to, he's a top 30 prospect for next season's draft. Wolfhook is a Team USA member. You've got to get him hitting the zone. Evan Blanco pitched okay, but he's not stretched out. And then some of the guys in relief were a little bit less crisp than I would like to see. So it's definitely a little concerning, the pitching, but the hitting is going to be fine. There's a kid from Hofstra that kept driving me nuts. Their leadoff man was on base like 10 times. He's only a sophomore, named Dylan Palmer. He hit 369 last year for Hofstra. I expect he's not going to end his career at Hofstra.
Yeah, I'm just going to say Hofstra wins the CAA just to make myself feel better. I know I have Campbell hosting a regional in my brackets. Oh, my cat wants to make an appearance, guys. Sorry about that. But I guess he also wants to tell you how good Hofstra hitting is. But,
Yeah.
you know, I do want to say, Monty, and try to talk me off the ledge real quick. Super fan, crazy psychopath fan talking here. If this team pitches like this weekend, obviously they're going to Jacksonville for a big series or weekend, not really series with, Iowa, Auburn, and Wichita State. Like, I think they get swept. I mean, I think the most disappointing or most disappointed group thing I saw all weekend in AC, again, coming from a Virginia fan, so there's some bias behind this, was the Virginia pitching staff, because it just felt like, I mean, I'm not trying to slander Hofstra, but look at the preseason polls in the CAA. This isn't a team that was given much. I mean,
Micah, they did score double-digit runs in all 3 games, so I guess that's just the formula. Is they got to score.
You're not going to do that against Iowa and Auburn, in my opinion. You're not going to do that against Wake in a couple weeks or Duke in that's where, again, it's just it's way too early. I'm freaking out for no reason.
Yeah. It's overreaction. It's overreaction Monday, or Sunday.
We're missing the tournament. We're gonna miss the ACC tournament. It's over. The sky is falling.
Over. Season's over. They went 3-0. Season's over.
Swept, but it's not good enough.
Yeah, it's not good enough. They swept. They didn't sweep this the way I wanted them to. No, I don't think there's necessary. There's reason to be concerned. I mean, let's talk about a team that was a top 5 national seed last year in Clemson. Look at how they started their season. Like, we got to remind ourselves not to put too much into these early results. Yes, it's concerning, but we're going to find out. It's going to be an early season test, but even if they get swept next week, it's not the end of the world. That's a learning opportunity for them to bounce back, or, they could turn into Louisville from last year. Who knows? Florida State from last year. But I don't expect that. Brian O'Connor is one of the best coaches in the country, and I think the pitching staff is deep. It's just a matter of figuring out who's fitting where and getting them to full strength.
Monty, before we move on, and Mike, you can answer this as well, how would you kind of rank this weekend? Because it felt like it was like a C- for me. Like, yeah, they won, but it was against Hofstra, and they really struggled with the staff. What would you kind of rank them?
They're the only team in my power rankings that went down after sweeping. Like, that didn't Duke jumped some teams, but I meant a team that also was behind them jumped them that went 3-0. Like for example, North Carolina. I put them above Virginia this week, even though I had Virginia above them last week, purely because what I saw was concerning. Again, they're still a top 25 team. Even in my bracketology, I have them as literally the highest ranked non-regional host. But I would say I like the C-. I think it's a passing grade. I mean, you swept. Like, you can't say you didn't pass, but it's not much more than a passing grade, in my opinion.
You guys, it's B-. They swept.
B-.
They scored double-digit runs.
But Monty, Virginia didn't lose a single non-conference series last year, so
and they still haven't.
Standard.
They still haven't this year.
Our Noah Darling said this about them expecting to not lose in Omaha.
I mean, Noah's team will never win in Omaha, so it's fine because they don't have a baseball team. So
that means they're undefeated in Omaha.
Well, yeah, but they're also winless in Omaha. So moving along now, after you guys have tried to dim my spirits this today, let's move on to that North Carolina team that Micah has put ahead of Virginia in his power rankings because he's mad at his hometown Hoos. The most impressive thing for me was Folger Boaz, the freshman, getting the ball Friday night. Obviously, Jake Knapp out for the year with the UCL, so Folger Boaz moves up into that Friday night role, and I think a lot of people were really unsure of how he would do, and he was fantastic. 5 innings, 1 earned run, 5 hits, 5 Ks, 1 walk, and got the team got the win to get the team rolling on the season.
Yeah, that one kind of surprised me. I know I kind of put an eyebrow up when I saw he was starting as the Friday night guy as a true freshman, but again, he absolutely shoved. Only walked 1 in 5 innings. And then obviously the big one is Vance Honeycutt got the home run. I know that people are expecting big things from him. 2 home runs
Over the weekend, he hit 2. But
I was saying on Friday night.
Okay.
He broke it open on Friday night, and that's the one that every single person in the country has really kind of been circling, as he had a sophomore slump as he kind of battled through injuries. But it was kind of a good thing to see him kind of get that Friday night home run under his belt, not have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, he did hit 1 on Friday and Saturday, but he didn't have the best weekend overall. I think he only got 2 or 3 total hits over the weekend, so otherwise he'd be up in that top performers list. But yeah, no, fantastic weekend. I just realized I'm really mad about not mentioning Aiden Teal on UVA and getting his two saves as the closer. So I just want to throw that in there before getting back to UNC. But
and that's why they're going to Omaha. There it is. That's why I was so negative, Monty, because you didn't mention Aiden Teal.
Yeah,
once
you
mentioned
forgot
the Teal at UVA, I immediately start thinking about my flights to Omaha. So
there you go. There
that's
you
all
go.
I needed.
Yeah, he looked nasty, very nasty, and he is the closer until further notice. Him and Blake Barker will split the duties for UVA. But getting back to UNC, I was really impressed with their offensive performance with Casey Cook and Colby Wilkerson and Parks Harbor, Alberto Ozuna. They've got a lot of experience, but they don't really. I mean, other than Vance Honeycutt, there's not a guy that you're necessarily afraid of. But they're doing fantastic, and they set a record on Sunday for stolen bases with 10 in a game, and it was like the 4th inning. So who might be?
I was really impressed with Olin Johnson. I mean, I know he wasn't stretched and he got hit around a little bit, right? But he had a lot of command of the zone. I really liked. He was my freshman of the year in the ACC. I kind of went out on the limb there. I mean, he's a walking beanstalk, which is obviously fun to see as well. But I thought he pitched pretty well for his first outing. Obviously, not stretched very far. I mean, like you mentioned, Folger Boas. I mean, he was incredible. And this team can hit. I mean, that's the one thing that I think was promising to see, was just the offense is clearly still there, and it wasn't just Honeycutt. That was not us, right? But some of the outside noise was, can North Carolina really hit, or was it just kind of a top heavy lineup? And you got contributions from all over the field. And I mean, Alberto Ozuna is a great example. I mean, that when he gets barrel on the ball, I don't know if that ball ever lands. I really don't. He crushes it. It's really cool to see. Obviously I watched these highlights too purely for scout, because ETSU's got Wagner in 2 weekends. But it was overall, again, all jokes aside about the sky is falling on Virginia, I think I came in with the way the Virginia series went with Hofstra is how I thought this would have gone with Wagner for UNC, and they kind of flipped, in my opinion. I think that's maybe why I'm so skewed on moving UNC above Virginia, because I mean, I thought that UNC was going to have at least one game, right, where you're sitting there in the 8th or 9th, like, are they really about to do this? Like, are you really about to lose to Wagner? And there was never a doubt. I mean, they were pretty much dominant from start to finish, and I think we saw the depth of this UNC team, which I don't think has gotten enough talk from experts outside of ACC country.
Yeah, the closest it got, I think Wagner was tied with UNC in the 7th inning of Game 2, 5-5, and you can see what happened after that, because 16-5. So, yeah, I mean, great performances. Dalton Pence out of the bullpen, I believe, went 3.1 scoreless innings for them. So that's promising as well. 3.2 scoreless innings for them in that second game. And then, of course, you have Matt Poston and Connor Bover as well, who are pitching well out of the bullpen. So it's looking really good for UNC right now.
This is a big season, I think, for UNC. I mean, all year we just kept hearing about Vance Honeycutt, and that was really it. But I think after this series, you start to see the names Colby Wilkerson and Parks Harbor. I mean, having great games. The pitching was phenomenal this series. They need to take that extra step. And I think they showed that they do have names and that they can. Mike and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where UNC will always be there. It's just a matter of if they can make that super regional run, or if they can make that Omaha run. They haven't been at Omaha. I think it's been more than a decade, right? I think like 2011 was their last trip to Omaha. So it's been a little bit, and they need to take that extra step of dominance, in my opinion.
Yep. No, they went in 2018, didn't they?
Maybe they did.
I think they did, because only reason why I think they did, Jake, was because last year obviously, if you've been to Omaha, the greatest thing in the world is finding apparel from from College World Series years in the past for $2. It's my new favorite hobby. So I remember seeing a UNC College World Series shirt, and I almost bought it for Nick when we were there, just because I know how much he loves UNC.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That was the banana game with Mississippi State, where Westbrook kept eating bananas and hitting home runs.
And anyway, moving along to one of the games that Micah watched, or one of the series that Micah watched a lot of. This was supposed to be a 4-game series. It ended up being 3 due to the weather in Florida, as we'll get into a little bit more later on in the show, because it affected several ACC matchups. But Miami looked like they were going to get upset on Friday night. They were down 7-5 late, and they were able to tie it thanks to a Blake Sear solo shot and a Jason Torres sac fly. And then they were able to start the bottom of the ninth inning, with 3 straight hits before Carlos Perez, the senior catcher, singled to left field on a 1-1 pitch to win the game 8-7. And then, of course, as you can see, the other 2 games were not good, but the starting pitching performances were. But obviously, the guy I really want to highlight, he's probably my freshman of the week, despite how well Drew Burris played. It's probably 1 or 2. We already talked about how well Henry Ford played for Virginia. Daniel Covett is another freshman who played fantastic, 9 for 13, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs for the Hurricanes. He has arrived.
Some are saying that U is back.
Go ahead, Micah.
I'm saying some are saying the U is back. That's all I know.
This one, the game 2 and game 3 really surprised me. They kind of slept through game 1 and then woke up. And then obviously Henrik Hernandez, the JUCO transfer in game 3, if they can get 6 innings out of their Sunday guy, they're going to win a ton of ACC games, because that seems to be a lot of teams' weaknesses.
I mean, he must have been in the conversation with Cam Leiter for ACC Pitcher of the Week, because 6 hitless innings, 10 Ks. That's phenomenal.
Just unreal from a Sunday guy. You expect these to be the Sunday shootouts.
Yep. So it looks like they found a really, really solid starter in Henrik Hernandez out of the JUCO ranks, because I thought I must not have seen the Saturday evening game. I must have watched the Friday evening game, because I do not remember watching him pitch. And when I looked at the stats, and I was like, this is unreal. So I went back and watched his start, and he's nasty. He's filth.
I had him as my ACC pitcher of the week, if I got to vote on that. Not to slander the Butler lineup, but I think the NJIT lineup was a little bit more deep than arguably the worst team in the Big East. So I was super impressed with Miami. I know, Monty, you said it. I got to watch a lot of it. So maybe it's just the bias of truly watching the game. Noah, if you're still on here, I just want to point out in our group chat when you said Miami was dead when they were losing in game 1 there. Just look who's back now.
That was his upset pick of the week too, Mike.
It was. And it for a while there, I'm not going to lie, I was a little scared. And then it was very, very funny to me that Miami goes on to win, and then, I don't know, some other school in the state of Florida loses to a team that's about 30 minutes outside of New York City. Let me know if you know who that might be. Oh, it's the Gators. So shout out to it just means more upsets, I guess, in the SEC. But, I overall, Miami could make an argument for one of the most impressive teams this weekend, because, you saw the resilience and the ability to come back and overcome what honestly kind of seemed like your number one guy, the guy that we all thought, he's in the conversation for potential ACC pitcher of the year, Gage Zeal, gets hit around by this NJIT lineup, and this team responds by rallying late to win. And then game 2, game 3, they're in control from start to finish, and there was never a doubt that they were the best team on the field that day. And I think that that tells you a lot about what this team is. You know, we obviously, you know, Nick alluded to it. We interviewed Lucas, and he mentioned, you know, how close knit this team is and how they're going to play with more tenacity. They're going to be tough. They're not going to be cute Miami like I guess the narrative has been in the past. And we saw that this weekend. We saw a team show that it overcome the adversity and then again just assert their dominance in game 2 and game 3. So I was pleasantly pleased with what I saw from Miami this weekend.
I think you brought up a good point, Micah. I was just about to bring it up. When we had Lucas on, he talked about how they need to be gritty, like how he loved to talk about how Pitt is gritty. They're not going to rely on their talent anymore. They need to dig deep and claw and win these games. I think Friday night showed you that they can do that. I think that was, yeah, sure, we can highlight Gage Zeal struggling as, you know, one of the potential ACC pitchers of the year. But I think it showed a lot of promise that this team is not going to just fold and quit. You know, it's kind of like with their football team, you know, they're down and it's like, oh, well, we're Miami. We don't really care. Right. You know, so I think it was a good nitty gritty win on Friday. And then they just showed off the talent on Saturday and Sunday. And I remember the start of last season for Miami when, you know, they won their series against Penn State to start off last year, but there were a lot of rumors flying around that the team wasn't close, the team wasn't together. They were off to a rocky start, and they never could really get over the hump of pure dominance in the ACC. Well, if what Lucas is saying is true, you can expect Miami to turn a corner and really rely on the grittiness of what they're trying to build there in terms of culture. So I liked what I saw out of Miami this week. I actually ranked them in my top 25. I think some people are disrespecting the Canes a little bit this season, and I think they're out to prove some haters wrong.
That's me and Monty. We both are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having some second thoughts. I mean, the way Jason Torres and Daniel. I mean, we knew Daniel Covett and Blake Sear were going to produce. I mean, I knew Costello was going to hit some home runs. I didn't know how Jason Torres would play as a full-time guy. He obviously had a fantastic weekend. He actually did about as well as Daniel Covett, and then the pitching staff I was really questionable about, but Schlesinger. He went 9 strikeouts in 3.1 innings in his first transition to the starting position. And then Herrick Hernandez obviously was fantastic. And you have to expect that Gage Zeal is going to be better too. So, you know, I may be eating my words from preseason pretty soon. So, but let's move along to another team, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who faced the Radford Highlanders over the weekend. It was Georgia Tech of old with a 21-8 scoreline on Friday night, and then a couple of closer games, 7-3, 6-3 on Saturday and Sunday. The big concerning thing for me is Scary Terry going just 1 inning, giving up 6 runs on opening day to Radford. He's a guy that you're hoping to be your Friday night ace, and kind of went out and laid an egg there. That's got to be concerning, but that's everything else for Georgia Tech looks to be a bright spot.
Yeah, does that worry you, Monty, that they didn't really get a long outing out of their number one? Is that kind of, I know that they're a really young team. That's one of the things that they're really going to count on down the stretch. That was kind of the feeling that I got coming out of this Georgia Tech Radford series, is that they're going to have to get better starts from their Friday night guy, or he's not going to be in their Friday night much longer.
Yeah, and at least Aiden Finateri came out the second day and had a really good outing, six innings, 1 earned run, and then he had a career high 8 strikeouts. It was a really good day for him to step up, and it looked like Cam Hill in relief of Mason Patel looked really good as well. So, there's some good stuff to see there, but that Terry bust start is really concerning. Micah, what are your thoughts on the Yellow Jackets?
Of course, I'm trying to pull up the stats. I had a nice little note that I wanted to mention, and of course now my phone doesn't want to work properly.
Well, Monty, while we're waiting, we didn't have Mason Patel as one of the starters, so we didn't even talk about him.
I didn't even have him on my spreadsheet. Yeah, I was surprised when they showed off the rotation, but Micah, just make sure you save the ACC Player of the Week for to talk about that for Nick.
That's fair. I think for me the most concerning part was not even just Georgia Tech. Obviously having a tough outing with your Friday guy, right? You kind of felt like the Georgia Tech bullpen still showed a lot of its flaws from last year. One guy that engages with us a lot on our fifth quarter ACC page is Ben King, and he's been great. Last year he was top 10 ACC out of the bullpen all year long, and he only had one appearance. And it didn't go very well for him. We know Radford's going to be an aggressive offense, and they're a different team than what we saw last year. Radford was one of the worst teams in college baseball last year, but it's overall. We know Georgia Tech can hit. I tweeted that on Friday night on our page. Like, we know they can hit, but they're not going to score 21, I don't think, in many ACC games with how good a lot of these teams are, right? From a pitching staff standpoint. I'm still very concerned because, obviously Peyton Green is Peyton Green. He's a stud, and Drew Burris is clearly living up to the hype, right? But yeah, I don't know. Like, on our page, selfishly, Georgia Tech fans interact with us all the time. There's nothing more I want than Georgia Tech to be like a good baseball team, because then our page gets more engagements and it just becomes more and more fun. But there's just a lot of question marks. This is still Radford, so we'll see. But we still got to give our flowers though to Aiden. I'm going to botch the last name. Vinatieri, did I get that right? And anyone know? I didn't get to watch the game live, so I didn't get to how the broadcaster said it. But based off the highlights I had seen, his stuff looked nasty, and that looked like Friday night stuff. So at least on the good side, we're talking about Scary Terry not having the best of outings. Well, you got someone this weekend that showed that they could potentially be the Friday guy if it's not Scary Terry.
Yeah, and Cam, for what it's worth, for Cam Hill and Carson Ballard threw 6 shutout innings on Sunday in relief, so there was some good from the bullpen. But Micah, man, you gotta stop. They swept.
I felt like we're talking about Virginia again. Like, it was just kind of a meh.
Is it because I said
Micah to a standard though?
Is it because I said Virginia reminds me of Georgia Tech of last year? Is that
exactly why? Yeah, honestly, that is it. You subconsciously planted the same thoughts I have about Virginia in my head with Georgia Tech. But again, Monty, in my defense, and Nick can defend me on this because Nick feels the same way. I think like last year on our page, all we had from Georgia Tech fans, and we still have it. I literally tweeted it on Friday, and look at the comments of all the Georgia Tech fans that responded. We still can't pitch. We still can't pitch. The pitching is still awful. The pitching is still a question mark. And I don't want to go that far. I don't think the pitching staff is bad. I don't think that at all. But it is so concerned because this offense is so good. This offense is a field of 64 quality offense. It's probably even a super regional, potentially even Omaha quality offense when it's clicking. It's will you get the pitching? And we still don't know if we're going to get it. So that's all. Again, ETSU swept Radford last season, so maybe I'm also just pinning Radford against them because I watched a 19-4 win for ETSU over Radford last year. So my brain goes, well, if we can do it, then Georgia Tech should be able to do it as well.
Yeah, I want to hear from Nick about what he thought about Peyton Green's performance this weekend.
Now I'm starting to miss him. Now I'm starting to miss him wearing the red and white. But no, I'm really happy for Peyton Green. Unfortunately, last year, Peyton, he had a lot of errors last year. I think a change of scenery was good for him. I think it was a good decision that he made. And I'm happy that he's thriving in the first week of the season, going 7 for 11 with 3 home runs. He had a lot of power at state, but man, getting 3 home runs in the first series is huge. In your Georgia Tech debut. So I was really happy for him. Terry kind of concerns me a little bit. If Cam Manassi didn't exist last year, Terry was the best closer in the ACC. He was leading the conference in saves. Like, he was neck and neck with Cam until Georgia Tech really started to sputter and Terry ran out of save opportunities. But we know this team can hit. when I was looking at their stats last year, at going through like a weekly recap, team wise, individual wise, they were keeping up with Wake and Virginia. They all were. All the guys were. Jackson Finley, everybody was. But the pitching, was a concern. I don't think you could take a whole lot out of this weekend. I mean, again, it is Radford, and Aiden had a really great game on Saturday, but Friday is the big highlight right there. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's a little early, but I mean, if you're Georgia Tech, you're happy you're 3-0 right now.
Yeah,
it's going to look great on the RPIs of the other ACC teams, I think is kind of what the takeaway that I got from Georgia Tech this weekend is.
Yep.
Just kind of a meh effort, but I mean, it's Georgia Tech. I think that this is kind of what we expected from them.
Yep. Well, just so everyone's aware, Peyton Green is your ACC player of the week after that performance. Fantastic for him. Hopefully he can keep that going for the Yellow Jackets, and their pitching can show us something. Moving along now to the second to last sweep of the week. Wake Forest swept their weekend tournament. I thought it was a fairly routine. I thought the offense looked a little rough in the first two games, but then they started to settle down a bit in the third game. I think they had 9 hits combined in the first two games. They had 13 hits in the third game against Akron, so a much better performance there. But the pitching, it was pretty routine for Hartle, Burns, Massey. They got the job done. Let's start with Nick, who was there for 2 of the 3 games, or I guess 1.5 of the games.
Half.
Tell us what your thoughts were.
Really.
Yeah, tell us some of your thoughts there.
The bats were a little bit concerning. At one point, I think in the first game against Fordham, Wake was winning like 5-1, but winning with 2 hits. Like that's what that says more about Fordham's errors that they committed in a couple of those innings, but you got what you wanted from your starters. Unfortunately, I did not get to see Chase Burns pitch. I was really looking forward to seeing that, but Hartle looked really good. He got a little flustered a bit with the umpire that was calling balls and strikes, but he settled down. He looked really good. Massey looked really good. The bullpen after Michael Massey pitched looked great as well. And then you saw a lot of guys coming in as Wake was taking off in game 3, just some of their bench getting out, getting some ABs. But who I really want to highlight is Adam Tillier. I mean, you're replacing Brock Wilkin. That's no easy task. I wrote about this Friday night. And man, the very first pitch he saw in a Wake Forest uniform, and that ball just went into orbit. He's so quick. One thing I will say about Adam that I think he does better than Brock did, he is quick at third base. He fields grounders like he's rounding second to third. Like he is so fast. He's very, very athletic. He's always got a smile on his face. Like he's one of the happiest dudes you'll ever meet. So Adam was unbelievable this series. He committed a couple of errors, but man, he really knows how to field the ball. Overall, it was a great weekend. Great weekend for Wake, in my opinion.
All right, Micah. They didn't score a lot of runs on Friday and Saturday, and you concerned? Is the bleed over from Georgia Tech and Virginia gonna bleed over?
They didn't score double digit. They only scored double digits once, Micah.
Yeah, and they gave up runs.
This might be the worst team in the state of North Carolina. That's what I want to say. No, I will say we did this exercise. Obviously, Monty still loves to bring up the, over under 10 runs for Duke against Wake in that series in Winston-Salem. I think that may have been a really bad line set by my fault. That's why I don't work in Vegas, guys. But I will say,
only one that took the over, by the way. So that's why I keep bringing it up. Go ahead, Micah.
It was a little concerning though. I mean, I guess maybe I just assumed that it was going to be an absolute slugfest and explosive offense. But if you look back at it, if I'm not mistaken, they were the second lowest scoring team in their own little classic. I mean, Akron was averaging like 9 runs a game, minus obviously that last one. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not even going to draw on the hitting because, I mean, if you get outings like this on a regular basis, I mean, you're only going to need 2 runs to win a game.
Yeah, I
90%
mean,
of the time at this point.
Massey's not even stretched out, and he
Yeah.
had a hitless outing.
Yeah.
But I do think I read something or heard something from one of the Wake beat writers who were talking about one of the players. I think was saying that they were trying to hit home runs in the first 2 games. They were pressing a little bit, and that may have played it. And then they settled down and just tried to play their game. And in the third game, that's where the offense got back on track because they need to something about really not. They need to understand they're not last year's team. They're not going to launch a million bombs and just to play within themselves, it sounds like. I mean, I was impressed with Austin Hawke. He had a really good series as well. I mean, he had an inside the park little league kind of home run.
Craziest thing I've ever seen.
and that wasn't even a hit. That's not even part of that 3 for 10. That's just that's just his speed doing some damage there. And then he had 4 of the 5 RBIs in game 2. So it was nice to see Seaver King get going on Sunday. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around him. The hype is legit, but a little bit of a slow start, making people a little nervous. But Jake,
the wind on Saturday was really, really bad. So he potentially could have had like a multi-homer game on Saturday.
But the wind pushed it in.
Wind was like blowing 25 miles an hour on Saturday.
Oh, geez. Jake, what are your thoughts? Any concerns?
No concerns. I mean, Chase Burns, he was doing that in inter squads, so don't think he played down to his competition with Illinois. But this felt like a team that we've seen from Wake in the past where they kind of just sleepwalk and you're like, yep, they won, check the box score. But I don't really think there's any concerns from the hitting or that bullpen in the back end. I think that Chase Burns and Josh Hardo are going to be the best 1-2 punch in the ACC, and they're going to ride those 2 horses, I think, until Omaha.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new faces that were making their Wake Forest debut, so you have to factor in nerves and pressure and stuff like that, and it certainly may have been a factor, and that's why there could be so much overreaction here on Monday after the weekend. So anyway, let's move along to a series that Jake actually got to see in person, shockingly, the last game of the series, which ended up being a pretty high-scoring affair. But Notre Dame sweeps Rice. The offensive statistics, not a lot to scream about, but I will say I want to pat Jake and myself on the back. In our very first deep dive episode, we did Notre Dame, and we highlighted that their outfield is going to be pretty decent. And if you look, they all kind of showed up. T.J. Williams, David Glancy, Tito Flores all showed up over the series, but the game 2 and 3 were come from behind wins for the Irish, as David Glancy actually got both comebacks started with solo home runs that sparked big innings. So lot to like from Notre Dame in the first week. Let's start with you, Jake, since you were there in person for one of the games. What are your thoughts on this Notre Dame Irish baseball team?
A few notes on their Friday. They faced Parker Smith for Rice, who is definitely far and away the best player on Rice. He truly could probably be in a lot of SEC staffs. That's how good he is. So the 3 runs doesn't really worry me there. And then on Sunday, I mean, just winning a game in a variety of different ways. The grand slam, I think, really kind of jump-started it. And the bullpen was good enough. I know that they got hit around. But again, I think that the long ball played really, really well for Notre Dame, and that's going to be something that they do throughout the year.
Yeah, I thought their bullpen played pretty well, particularly in the first game when you had a couple of guys that came in and really shut down any threats. But Micah, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame?
I really enjoyed watching Caden Spivey on Friday night. I'm actually really salty. He was supposed to be a Kingsport Axeman, the team that I help out for here in the summer in my hometown. But then he ended up just working out in the summer instead of coming to the actual roster. But, I thought he showed true Friday night stuff. Obviously, he's not super stretched out just yet, but I really liked how he looked. I also loved Notre Dame's resilience. I mean, I think yesterday was a great example. Obviously, Jake got to see it a little bit more in person, but just the way they kept battling. I mean, they they continued to make mistakes. Rice kept sticking around in the game, and then next thing you know, they're right there, and Notre Dame takes the lead with that grand slam. And was it the 8th, right? Or was that the 9th? I can't remember now.
It was the 7th.
The grand slam
7th.
yesterday?
They went ahead in the 7th, and then the grand slam I think was in the.
Yeah, but they went ahead and they gave up the lead.
It was a grand slam in the 9th that sealed the series.
Yeah.
Sweep.
Yeah, because it was 13-7 or 13-8, and they gave up.
Yeah, it was 8. It was 8-7. Then Rice tied it to make it 8-8, and then they hit the grand slam. I believe that I think they made it 13-8. It was already 9-8, but then the grand slam made it 13-8, and obviously they gave up 2 runs in that next half inning. But I really just enjoyed the resilience of this team. I mean, at the end of the day, none of us have super high expectations for them, but I've been Mr. Negative Nancy on this podcast. Clearly, I'm going to try to be positive with this one. I was actually
Notre Dame is where you choose to be positive.
Yeah, that's the line.
That's the line. No,
they exceeded my expectations. Sorry, I have high expectations for some teams. I'm going to now hold every team to this expectation of if you win one game, you know what? You make me happy. I'm just going to be no negatives. No negatives. Louisville
there is one
in the country. There
is one team that doesn't qualify for your.
Yeah, Nick, you got anything to add to the Fighting Irish?
I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that their bats are all either seniors or grad students. So if this team is going to do anything special this year, make a little run, hopefully make the regionals, they got to trust that experience and senior leadership. But I don't really have a whole lot from the pitching side. I mean, 3 runs, 1 run. I mean, that's really nice to get out of your starters, but the bullpen is a little concerning, giving up more and more runs. So we'll see where that goes. I don't think they'll play real well when it comes to ACC play. But if you're Notre Dame, some people pick them 13th, some people pick them 14th. You're happy with a 3-0 start on the road.
Absolutely. And now we get to our very, very last sweep. This was a 2-game sweep due to weather. They were supposed to play 3 games Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Saturday game got canceled, and they opted not to do a doubleheader on Sunday. Florida State, pretty dominant wins, 11-0 and 15-5. The big story will be their starting pitching. Both Leiter and Arnold were fantastic. Cam Leiter earned not just ACC Player of the Week honors, but National Pitcher of the Week honors for his 13 strikeouts over 5 innings, just 2 walks, 1 hit on 89 pitches. But for me, I was really impressed with Jamie Arnold, who was relegated to the bullpen last year after a really, really shaky couple of starts in his collegiate career as a freshman. Now back as a sophomore, he looked very, very good. 5 innings. 9 Ks, 2 hits, 3 earned runs. So, not bad starting pitching from Florida State. They're off to a good start, and then you can see how some of their hitters did. I'm going to start with Jake on this one, just because I know he's obsessed with Florida State.
I'm very obsessed with Florida State, and it's time to get on the hype train. I mean, Cam Leiter having those 13 strikeouts, only recording 15 outs. And then some of the kind of unknown guys. I know Tibbs wasn't really high on our list. We talked a ton about Cam Smith, who didn't have any errors in the field. I know the bat was kind of slow there, but his defense has been much, much improved. And then Alex Lodice up the middle. I mean, that really was the Achilles heel of Florida State last year, was that defense up the middle. And at least early on, the reviews are pretty glowing. The only kind of negative I think I can give Florida State is they wore the maroon pants. Other than that, it seemed like it was a perfect weekend from Florida State.
Yeah, Deamez Ross really impressed me with the way he led off being a spark plug for the offense. But McGuire Holbrook, who didn't even get to start on opening day, had a monster game on Sunday when he got his first start. And I mean, that's only one game, folks. He went 3 for 3, 1 double, 1 home run, 5 RBIs in that 15-5 win. So. Micah, give me your thoughts on the Florida State Seminoles. They looking like an NCAA tournament team to you?
Yes. No, I definitely think they're an NCAA tournament team. Obviously, the sky is still falling for them because they have to now. I think the most impressive part or the takeaway I have is we already know that Link Jarrett can coach, right? Like we know that he is one of the best coaches in the sport, and he's got depth now. I mean, you just mentioned McGuire Holbrook. I mean, he didn't even get the start, right? That tells you there's guys up and down this roster that can play at this level. And, that's obviously dangerous. This is a program that I think is, obviously it's one of the best brands in the sport. I think, too, with obviously the passing of legendary Coach Martin, I think there's just something. I mean, Jake, I'm on board with you. Like, I'm 100%.
You like the burgundy or you hate it?
Oh, well, actually, that's my uniform of the week. If we're being honest, no, I'm just kidding. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was kind of like I'm not against it. I'm not a huge full-colored uniform guy in general. I actually think I think Florida State is one of the better of the ones I've seen. I mean, our Sunday uniforms.
Could you imagine it with like a cream pant or something like that? Like it was close.
That's fair. No, that's 100% fair. But besides obviously the uniform stuff, I mean, I just think that the Florida State just, again, it's Butler. It's early. We're trying to be positive, negative, whatever. But I just think what we saw is Link Jarrett mixed with some depth is going to be scary, and they're going to catch some teams. I mean, I am looking forward to when they can start the midweek play when they get Florida, and they're obviously getting into conference play as well. Just there's not too much you can take away from a 2-game series with Butler, but somehow I actually walked away more positive about them than I was going into the weekend.
I think that's a good description of them.
Yeah, I agree, Micah. Man, I think James Tibbs is going to be one of their leaders this year. Hopefully he'd be back next year because I think that's when Florida State really gets rolling in terms of like Link Jarrett building the depth there. But this is a team that's going to be fighting for a regional spot, and they're not going to back down with a fight. So, again, you can't take away too much out of a 2-game series, but you like the start, and you like that they finally have depth.
Monty, any closing notes on Florida
absolutely.
State?
And what's interesting is can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to note is Florida State, first game since the passing of Mike Martin, scored 11 runs, and Mike Martin wore number 11. So that's a pretty cool little moment there. By the way, that game was only 3-0, I think, in the 6th inning before James Tibbs hit a grand slam to break that one open. And then they had a couple of their backups in Max Williams and Cal Fisher hit back-to-back home runs for their first Florida State home runs, and for Cal Fisher, his first collegiate home run. So pretty cool moment. Moving along to another fun series that we will start with Nick once I sum this up here. NC State, they had a bit of a hiccup on Saturday. They lost to VCU, my hometown VCU Rams 9-6, but they sandwiched that with some pretty good pitching performances on Friday and Saturday. Friday, Sam Highfill, he looked a little shaky in the first inning, settled down pretty well after that. And then Shane Van Dam, who we thought was going to be in the rotation, he comes in and is nails for 4 innings on Friday. But the guy we want to circle is the freshman Ryan Marone, right? What are you laughing about?
I thought you were going to go Jacob Cozart. You had it all teed up, and then
I wish you would put yourself on mute so I didn't hear you giggling to yourself every time.
I thought you had it teed up for
Cozart. You have way too much fun listening to other people. It's disturbing. But Ryan Marone, the freshman, fantastic start on Sunday. 5 innings, no earned runs. He was a bit of a surprise to some to get that nod in the rotation, and yet 8 strikeouts, just 2 hits on 89 pitches. We're going to start with the NC State guy, Nick.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to start off a little negative, and I think that's maybe Micah rubbing his negative vibes on me.
But I'm the negative one on the show. Got it. I guess in Nick's defense here, my team swept, his didn't, so he has a little bit more room for frustration. But
yeah. Man, that Saturday game just reminded me of last year because of the errors. I think in one inning they had 3 errors, and it was very, very sloppy. I think State should have won that game. Should have given Dom the win. But they cleaned it up. It wasn't too bad for them. And then now I'll start with the positive stuff. We did think that Shane was going to be one of the starters in for Matt Wilderson. But Ryan Marone, I mean, he was hyped, man. Like, he was electric. Just his body language off the mound. I mean, he was awesome. I think that just shows how much depth NC State has in terms of their bullpen and starting rotation this year. And that was one thing that they were lacking all year. They could never get the rotation right. They could locate, but they would give up the big hit all the time. And if it wasn't that, it was the errors. And unfortunately, the errors were the reason why they lost Saturday's game. But I loved what I saw from Sam. 5 innings, 1 earned run, 1 hit, 6 strikeouts. He went pretty long too with 79 pitches. I mean, that's awesome. He's going to be the guy that you look to improve a lot and is going to be, their leader this year. He struggled so much last year. I'm happy that he's back in the Friday role. He seems very comfortable with that. And in terms of the bats, I mean, Cozart was phenomenal. I love Alex Sosa coming in as a DH and only a freshman. I mean, everyone looked really, really good hitting wise. One thing we all know is that State can hit, but it's the pitching that kind of brings them down. But pitching was really good. I have nothing negative to say about the pitching in the starting rotation.
Hey, there we go. Nothing negative to say about this. Yeah. I know there were a lot of NC State fans that were complaining, so that's why that's not a shot at Micah at all. Micah.
State fans complain all the time, no matter
that's true.
what.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yeah. It rubs off on me.
Micah.
First off, I'm gonna just bring down the negativity. I guess I'll be the negative guy. I'm fine with it. Jacob Cozart wasn't even the best Cozart this weekend in college baseball. His brother Caleb had 4 home runs at UNCG. So, I mean, step up your game, Jacob. What are we doing? I mean, clearly not. I don't know why he's in your top performers list if his brother's doing 4 times the amount of work that he's doing.
They go up against Wake this week, so that's going to be really cool to watch.
But obviously, no, that's a joke. But VCU was able to beat NC State, Monty, because VCU, like NC State, are used to playing in crappy ballparks. So that is the other reason.
This guy, man.
I can say it. You can't. It's my hometown ballpark. It's my crap hole.
I'm sorry, NC State fans. Your stadium's not that bad. It's nowhere near as bad as the Diamond in Richmond.
The Diamond is really bad.
The only nice thing about the Diamond is that they have a team called the Flying Squirrels that play there, which is just an amazing name. But Monty, I'm allowed to say that because when I worked for the Augusta Green Jackets, we were a Giants affiliate, and our players preferred to stay in single A because they didn't want to go play in double A Richmond. They were like, either skip me to Sacramento or just keep me here in Augusta. I'm good.
They're working on a new stadium, but they've been working on it for years. But anyway.
But no, I mean, from this weekend series in general, I mean, obviously, for Nick's sake and for NC State fans, it's great to see Sam Highfield look so good. Last year obviously was not his best, but he looked really good. Obviously, I mean, the pitching, minus Dominic Fritton, looked way better than even I had kind of hoped to see. I will say, Monty, VCU is now my A10 champion in my bracket. I don't know if you saw that. I almost put your face as the VCU logo, just since you're a VCU homer now. Guys, he covers the ACC and VCU.
I go to one VCU game a year, all right, when UVA comes to town.
He says that, but he's probably the only guy on a VCU blog page right now posting about, how great of a weekend it was for them and how they're coming for the A10 crown. Watch out, Davidson. They're on their way. But
hey, George Mason's got the crown.
Yeah, George Mason's the defending A10.
Despite being a 6 seed in the conference tournament.
But obviously, overall, I mean, it stinks that NC State took 2 of 3. I think the sky was falling on Nick on Saturday for a little bit there. He seemed to. I don't know if you had a stressful day at work, Nick, or not. Sometimes I can tell if Nick had a stressful day, so I think that may have played a role into it. But overall, I mean, I think we saw a lot of what we were hoping to see from this team, and I don't think what we saw from Fritton on Saturday is going to be the usual. I honestly, looking back, I actually went and watched. That's one of the games I went back and watched, like the full broadcast kind of thing on ESPN Plus afterwards. It kind of felt like VCU actually just played really, really well. I'm not putting too much on NC State. Again, minus the errors, which Nick mentioned, but we can only hope that gets cleaned up at some point.
Yeah, and Jake, we're going to skip you to move on to our next group.
Wait, hold on. Before we need to give credit to Coach Avent getting his 1,000th win.
Oh my goodness!
Guys,
Thank you. Yeah.
You're so right. Oh my gosh, Jake. Thank you.
What is this slideshow, Monty? You've been out here talking about how negative I've been, and you can't even put together a slideshow that makes
Did you guys watch the actual video of like all the players? Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. I wish Trey Turner would have made the video, or Carlos Rodon, but from guys from the 90s to Russell Wilson, I mean, that's just what a great video. Yeah.
Now we can move on, Monty.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are moving on to Jake's Cinderella team from last year, the Boston College Eagles. They had a pretty good weekend. They took 2 of 3. The only loss coming to number 20 Kansas State, a close loss there. Jake, why don't you go ahead and get us started with your thoughts on Boston College?
I think it was a B-plus weekend for the Boston College Eagles. I mean, they took care of business with John West going 4 innings on Friday. They're really in that Kansas State game, and it really could have gone either way. And then the Sunday slugfest, they ended up coming in on the other side of it. Nick Wang was kind of the name that I really was impressed by. He had a bunch of quality at bats. And then Kyle Wolf, he's kind of stepping in for, his name kind of eludes me, Monty.
Joe Vitrano.
My favorite Italian from last year. So he had some big shoes to fill. But I really liked what Nick Wolf did from a defensive standpoint too as well. He picked a few balls out of the dirt. So exciting stuff from my BC Eagles.
Micah, you don't have them as a field of 64 team.
I do
disrespect. Let's hear the negativity.
No, here's the best part. I had them near the bottom of the ACC coming into this, and I'm somewhat impressed with them. Obviously I've seen a lot of Todd Internato coach teams. I'm Southern Conference guy. It was great to see that he's already implemented a lot of what he likes to do with this team. They were aggressive. They were pretty sound. The pitching, obviously, I think overall from a starting standpoint was very, very good. Obviously, we saw a little bit of bullpen struggles, especially against that Cal team. But I mean, I think this field might be sleepy good. I went into it in the preview kind of not bashing Cal and Ohio State, but I was kind of like, those are just names, right? Those are schools but it's not because of baseball. And, Cal especially, they had a very good weekend overall. Ohio State was not great, but I think they were better than people thought. They were a pretty good mid-major team, if you ask Jake.
I forgot Cal Lipsey was still at Ohio State. That was
Trey Lipsey.
Sorry, Trey Lipsey. I feel like he's been there forever.
And obviously, Jake, you alluded to. I mean, they were right there with Kansas State, and not to credit Boston College more, but because I'm the negative guy, but I think you got Kansas State's best because they seemed pretty pissed off about what happened the night before. I think you got a pretty motivated Kansas State team to where I think if Kansas State doesn't lose on Friday to Cal, it was Cal, right? I'm not tripping. It was Cal they lost to. Yeah, if they don't lose that one on Friday, I want to think that Boston College wins this game because I really do think that Kansas State was just, Kansas State knew they couldn't lose 2 to start the year. So overall, I was very impressed with Boston College. I mean, Monty, I can't put every HC team in a field of 64. I mean, I want to be a homer and put them all in there. Pitt's probably my national champion come next week for the actual.
If they keep winning, they're winning the right way.
But
I will say,
I got to be negative. They're one of 4 ACC teams that lost a game this weekend, so you can't put all the ACC teams in, and if you didn't win them all, then Is it fair to put you in? No, but really though, I was actually very impressed with Boston College, and I'm excited to see how they continue to progress under Tyler Donato.
Yeah, the best pitching performance isn't even up here on the screen. Tyler Mudd in relief of John West. I think he went 4 shutout innings and was absolutely fantastic as they really broke it up. The offense broke it open against Ohio State, and then Tyler Mudd just cleaned up the pitching side to keep that game 9-2 and get them really started. So he was the really shining star of the bullpen on Friday night, and then you had a little bit more concerns with the bullpen on Saturday and Sunday. But Nick, what are your thoughts on Boston College? Did you like what you saw?
Yeah, I did. It was really impressive. I think if Duke didn't have the round robin that they did this weekend, Boston College had one of the more anticipated round robins of the weekend. I mean, you're playing a team from Jake thinks Big Ten is mid-major, but you're playing each team from a different Power 5, which is impressive. So that will help your RPI a little bit.
They avoided Georgetown. That's kind of a big underrated part of the scheduling too.
Yeah, they did. So I was really impressed. I didn't really know what to expect with Boston College going into the season with all that they lost, losing their head coach, losing some players. But they did a good job in the transfer portal and who they hired. I mean, going all the way to Arizona is a tough task anyway. So, I mean, I like what I saw. The bats are good. The pitching was great. They could be a team that is going to upset a lot of ACC teams, could play spoiler when they come up to Boston College. So I liked what I saw. It was you couldn't ask for a better start. Maybe you could beat Kansas State. Yeah, but Kansas State's number 20. And I think Micah laid it out perfectly. If Kansas State doesn't lose Friday night, I think BC has a real shot at sweeping this. So,
yeah, and the ACC, it's loaded. Now moving on, to a team that took 2 out of 3, the Virginia Tech Hokies. I fully give Micah permission to be negative here, especially considering tonight's basketball game. Which
am I allowed to talk? Am I allowed to go? Because I need to get this out before I regurgitate my lunch.
Do it.
I was so proud of Virginia Tech. I mean, it hurts me. It hurts me. By the way, I also want to just preface this. Now, granted, Monty, Jake, you're forgiven from this, but Nick and Grayson, I don't know if Grayson's watching and or listening, but they tried to tell me that Charlotte was going to win this series, and there was one person on our preview podcast that picked the Hokies to get 2 of 3, and that was me, the Virginia fan. And
this is after you gave me trash for my Hokies making the NCAA tournament take.
I didn't give you trash for it. I just more was upset with you as a Virginia fan that you would do that. They're still in my field, by the way.
Monty's like their number 1 fan recently. He's been going crazy.
I really
do
think that Monty is a Virginia Tech fan, because if you were a true Virginia fan, Monty, you wouldn't have reminded me that the basketball team, Virginia lost by 34 tonight to them. Thank you for the reminder, Monty. I appreciate that.
I'm an unbiased baseball journalist. So
yeah, well, you're hurting my feelings as a unbiased non-basketball journalist. But no, seriously, I mean, I think what Virginia Tech did this weekend is a credit to this team. I mean, Monty, I'm going to be the first one to admit I stole. I'm going to give you full credit for the best infield in the ACC. You opened my eyes to that, and we had Nick can attest to this. We had Wake Forest journalists / fans in our DMs like, you think Virginia Tech has the best infield in the ACC? And I know it's only one weekend, but I don't think that Wake Forest has proven they're better yet. I mean, look at the stats. I mean, Carson DiMartini was fantastic. Garrett Mitchell was good. We saw a sound Virginia Tech team. Obviously, when we talk pitching, we didn't get a good outing on Sunday from Griffin, but overall, I mean, Friday was a work of art from this Virginia Tech team. I mean, if we could just give I like that, Jake. That was
chef's
nice.
Kiss. It was perfect.
If I could give a chef's kiss, the coach chef.
Do we give a game of the week accolade in terms of just pure, like, this was the best most impressive performance, I think it honestly goes to Virginia Tech in that Friday game. They just, from start to finish, offensively, defensively, pitching, and again, based off the expectation. I thought they were going to take 2 of 3, but I did not think they were going to go in game 1 and win 10-0 against Charlotte.
And Brett Renfro, man. I mean,
Yeah.
shades of Drew Hackenberg coming out of nowhere as a freshman. Renfro was announced as the starter, a freshman on Friday night, just like Folger Boaz at UNC. And, I mean, 5 shutout innings, 7 Ks. Charlotte's not a bad team.
And he probably could have gone longer. I really do think that he had probably 6, 7 innings in him, but obviously, again, it's so early.
They've learned their lesson after last year about having people throw over.
They loved Hackenberg's ERA was so bloated because they just left him out there to eat innings.
But so it was again, it pains me. I mean, I'm sick. I was negative about my favorite team, and then my arch rival. I'm out here giving all the praise. Maybe I'm the closet Virginia Tech fan. Oh man, I know I am. Appointment on Wednesday. I might have to mention to my doctor that if you ask me, have you been having any sort of mental issues? I might be like, yeah. I'm taking my rival baseball team. I'm giving them flowers and then crapping on my favorite team. But no, I mean, honestly though, Virginia Tech, huge kudos to. This was a very promising weekend, and another weekend like this, and we might be talking. Actually, Monty, your take of them in the tournament not being as far-fetched as I did think it was, 2 weeks ago when you told me that.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because Jake decided he had a hot take on the weekend rotation, and it might sound familiar to you that Virginia Tech is not going to be as bad as people think. And he thinks they could be a dangerous team if they get the pitching figured out. And he's been listening to me say that for weeks now, and he decided to pass that off as his own on the weekend rotation. Jake, what are your thoughts on Virginia Tech this weekend?
I think that it was, like I said, a perfect weekend. I mean, Garrick Ebel getting the start later in the week. I know that we've talked at time and time again about when is he going to figure it out at the plate. Having 2 hits, I think is just one of the more impressive things that we've seen. And then again, Monty, we were texting back and forth on Friday about the pitching. If they get even half as good of starts as they got out of Brett Renfro going forward, they're going to be a very, very dangerous team. And that infield hit, but we knew that going in. So credit to Virginia Tech, excited to see. And again, I'm not even really mad that they lost that game on Sunday because I was just so impressed with their starting pitching.
Yeah, and then Chris Canizaro obviously did great, but let's finish up with Nick on your thoughts on the Virginia Tech Hokies. Are you kind of in agreement with us they could be a dangerous team?
Yeah, especially after this weekend. I mean, man, Charlotte, a former tournament team last year, went the distance in the regional last year. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought. But, I remember now. Virginia Tech, when we previewed this, I had them losing this series, like Micah pointed out. And I was very impressed. Brett Renfro, I mean, wow, you couldn't ask for anything better from a freshman starting pitcher giving up 0 runs in 5 innings pitched and having 7 strikeouts. I mean, that's unbelievable. They're going to be a dangerous team to watch out for. I think peak, if this continues, they could be a top 5 team in this country. Or I'm sorry, not the country, in the conference. Everyone kind of had them. I think I had them around 11, 12-ish area in terms of where they would finish in the conference. But this was such a great start for them. I'm excited to see where they go through on out the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's again, the ACC is so deep. We're seeing a lot of good things here early. I think they're just going to beat each other up all season long. And I think overall for the first 13 teams we just talked about, really, really good weekends. But now we're going to finish up with a team that unfortunately got the short end of the stick with some scheduling due to weather, and then ultimately didn't get to play their third game, and that's the Louisville Cardinals, who led in both games at different points and fell short with losing 8-7 to Indiana State, who went to a super regional last year, and lost 4-3 to UConn, who was a tournament team last year. Both very, very good programs. unfortunately, Louisville's bullpen in both instances just kind of couldn't hold on to the lead. UConn ended up winning in walk-off fashion, and then Indiana State was able to get a lead in, I think, the 7th inning, and then Louisville couldn't score to tie the game or take the lead. But Sebastian Gongora, in his debut, the Wright State transfer, 2023 Horizon Pitcher of the Year, he had a decent start. He was a little erratic, but ultimately held Indiana State to just 2 innings. He left with the lead, and then from there it went a little haywire. But I am going to start with Micah on this one. I know both Micah and Jake are wearing their Louisville hats, but I'll start with Micah. I know we were all disappointed that it wasn't streaming. What were your thoughts on the Louisville series? I guess I'll say series, even though it was a doubleheader on Friday.
Are we sure these games got played? Because I didn't see any pictures. I didn't see any. I mean, there was one Indiana State video, but like, are we sure that was Louisville in the background? I'm not sure. No, obviously it would have been nice for it to be streamed. I enjoyed watching a little bit of USF when they were being streamed. So they did a good job with the streaming, but obviously didn't get to see Louisville. I think I was most bummed that I didn't get to see Carson Liggett pitch, which Monty was making me mad because he was confusing me on Twitter when I
was trying to hide the fact that I'd messed up my original response. So
yeah, I was very confused. But anyways,
see that he liked your tweet.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. Liggett liked your tweet when you tweeted about him on Saturday.
His dad followed us on Twitter this weekend too. So
that's hilarious.
Obviously, Homer page here, but I think what's most disappointing to me, Monty, is not the fact that obviously losing these games the way they did, right? Indiana State, I think the Indiana State one is maybe more frustrating because they give up the lead after having a 4-2 lead. It becomes 5-4. That next half inning, Louisville gets those 3 right back, and it's 7-5. And I'm going to be honest. At that point, I said, this team's going to win this game. I just felt like this team had the ability to punch back, and Indiana punches right back. It's 3 more, and then obviously Louisville doesn't have any more left in the tank. And then similar to the UConn game, UConn scores first, then Louisville gets 3 runs in the 7th. It's 3-1, and then the 8th and the 9th go to UConn. And you look at you have the pitching lines, right? The starting pitching lines, which, by the way, I don't know if you just now realize it says starring pitching instead of starting pitching.
I noticed about 7 slides ago because it was a copy and paste job. So, but every single one of them is, thank you for pointing that out.
And that's the editor of my stories.
Audience.
So if there's ever any grammar issues in my stories, guys, it's not my fault. It's actually Monty's. But
we're in good hands.
But no, you look at these lines, right, and you would be like, wow, the pitching was really good this weekend. But obviously, we don't share the bullpen lines, and it's disheartening. I think the worst part is Louisville needs this game for their resume. The rest of their season, out of conference now until conference play, are RPI drainers. St. Bonaventure and Eastern Kentucky, and the list can kind of go on. They don't, minus Xavier, is that Tuesday or Wednesday? I'm forgetting which day it is. Yeah, but and then because Kentucky's after conference play starts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So until conference play, they don't play. I don't know if you guys saw that graphic. I can't remember who put it out, but it was ranking out of conference schedules for the Power 5 teams, and Louisville was number 2 overall in the easiest out of conference schedule, and that included this Indiana State, UConn, and USF weekend. And we obviously talked to the Third and Central guys that cover Louisville baseball on our podcast. We were all this weekend in Tampa was a huge one for them because it was kind of going to be their RPI boost or bust. And now you're sitting 0-2. You don't get the USF game, which I know for a fact Louisville would have won because the greatest pitcher in college baseball was throwing in Carson Liggett. But, it's disheartening because especially if they don't win on Wednesday again, this is awful to say so early in the year, but Xavier is kind of a must win for this team because if not, our perception of Louisville, minus again, to look at the conference play and maybe they turn it on there, won't change because they sweep St. Bonaventure or they take the midweek with Eastern Kentucky. So it's disheartening, but I will say, this team showed a lot of glimpses of being a NCAA tournament team. I still have them as one of my last 4 in on my bracketology, even though I might just be biased kicking in at this point. But it's one of those things where, like you mentioned it, Monty. I mean, they weren't supposed to play UConn until the Sunday, and they get pushed up to get the 2 best teams. No offense, USF, that's a good ball club, but the 2 best teams in this tournament, you get them in a 6-hour span. I mean, that's we're judging a team off of 12 hours of baseball. Yeah, it was 2 games, but opening day, 2 games, like a lot of teams, when you have a bad opening day, I mean, if the sky is falling for Louisville, then I guess Florida isn't going to make the NCAA tournament at this point, because they also went winless this weekend in the state of Florida. So, no, but it is disheartening a little bit, but I was overall not as negative. Maybe my roles split midway through the show. Next time, put Virginia at the end of the show, Monty. That way I can be positive about them, because I'm more positive at the end of the show. But I mean, that's kind of my takeaway from Louisville, is overall a disappointing weekend. But hopefully this isn't this doesn't get hold against them too much, and they honestly just use it for motivation moving forward.
Yeah, you need to remind yourself too that they got the games moved up. They had to open at 9 a.m. Central Time.
Right, and the games it wasn't a day-night doubleheader. It was 45 minutes after the completion of the first game.
So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. The bullpen's really going to get taxed, and especially if they played 2 close games that really could have gone either way. The sky's not really falling for Louisville fans. I wouldn't say it's must-win, because, again, we saw it with Clemson last year. That at the beginning of the season, as long as you take care of business in the ACC, it really doesn't matter. I mean, they have a ton of chances to go in and win a lot of games. And, again, they were in both of the games that they got. They had 2 great starting pitchers with Corey. I know he kind of faded there at the end, and then Evan Webster going 4 innings. So the sky's not falling for Louisville. They're going to have to just take care of business this weekend, which I think that they're more than capable of doing. I think that they just didn't get the freebie with USF. They had to play at 10 a.m. Just a lot went against them.
Yeah, Nick, what are your thoughts?
It's just kind of unfortunate. Like Micah had mentioned, we had the Third and Central podcast on a couple of weeks ago, and we highlighted this week, like Micah made a really good point. There's not a whole lot of RPI opportunities in terms of the out of conference. I mean, yeah, you got Kentucky down the road. I think they play Indiana out of conference as well. But this was a huge one, and it just kind of sucks that the weather played a factor. They had to play a doubleheader on Friday. There's not much you can really do with that. And, you're playing 2 teams that made the tournament. One of them should have hosted a super regional. It's just kind of unfortunate. I don't think if you're a Louisville fan, you should freak out about it. I know it sucks and you're down the dumps, and this was a huge opportunity, but it's kind of out of the players' control in terms of, as far as to a point. But I'm not really freaking out about Louisville. Now, did I rank them last in my power rankings? Well, yeah, they went 0-2. Everyone else won, but there's still some upswing to this lineup. There's still some upswing to the pitching. And we haven't seen Carson Liggett pitch yet. So I think they have some get right games down the line. Like we said, St. Bonnie's and some other midweek games that they can get right. So I'm not freaking out so much.
Well, that'll finish up our recap. It's been a long one here. We are not going to preview any of the games this week. We're probably going to get into the preview mode once conference play gets started, but we will have a preview article later this week, and we'll share some of our predictions on that. Anybody have any thoughts they want to throw in there at the end of this?
I guess I'll go first. I came away, like I said, really impressed with Virginia Tech. The sky's not falling for UVA. The sky's not falling for Louisville. The sky's not falling for NC State. It's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint, as I kind of get some more coaches cliches in there. But excited to be back talking ACC baseball. I'm glad we can actually talk about games instead of speculating.
Yeah, I think the ACC, just quickly, I was negative all show, right? I think the ACC had a better weekend than any conference in college baseball this weekend, though. I mean, am I wrong to feel that way? It felt like, yeah, there were teams that I felt like I had high expectations for, and maybe I just had unrealistic expectations for a weekend series, right? But we had one team that had a losing record, and again, we just talked about it. It was probably the worst hand you could have been dealt. 2 top 30 programs, probably, in that ballpark area. NCAA tournament, teams in a 5-hour window, moved up, weather, all the just perfect storm, right? I think it was a really great weekend for the ACC, all things considered, and it definitely has me excited looking on to what's next. And we're not going to preview it, but there's a good weekend of games that's coming up. Obviously Virginia's got a big one down in Jacksonville. I know I'm excited for that personally, and some good midweeks as well. So some real tests. So overall, very happy with the ACC weekend.
2 quick things. I wanted to shout out to Nick Kurtz's dad, Jeff Kurtz, for reaching out to me and inviting me to the NIL function first pitch dinner. Again, it was an honor being there, seeing Chipper Jones talk and hearing about the future of Wake Forest baseball. If you're a Wake Forest fan, you should be really excited because they are navigating through the NIL waters very well right now, where they thought they had a very slim window to be a national brand in college baseball. Is grown so much. And it's not because like NIL money, it's in terms of the money they're getting for their facilities. That's why you got guys like Chase Burns and Adam Tillier and Seaver King and Tate Balasetto all coming in because they want to win. They know they can get to the next level in their baseball careers. Wake is doing something that not a whole lot of other programs can say they are doing. And I mean, I'll quote Tom Walter real quick. He said, in the next 10 years, we can hope to be in Omaha 5 more times and win the national championship twice. And that's huge for them. So I was really honored to be there. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to the Sacramento kid that got pegged like 9 times this weekend. College baseball is so back, and I love it. The TCU series was awesome. That's just college baseball through and through. And as an NC State guy, I can't wait for the Hawaii series. I mean, that was a crazy, crazy series against Ole Miss when Ole Miss went there this weekend. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Well, we will be back next Monday, similar time. In the meantime, this will be a podcast for you guys. Is the podcast Around the Diamond, or is it?
It's the Around the Diamond show, but it's called the Just Means Less ACC podcast.
The Just Means Less.
Just Means
podcast.
Less.
Yeah.
So
it'll be uploaded as a podcast. If you missed any of that, it's also here on our YouTube. And go check out the content on our website. We've had a ton put up there, and there's interviews on YouTube with Chris Pollard and who's the other one, Jake?
Kurt Sarlos of TCU.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So go check those out. College baseball is back. Enjoy the midweeks and keep looking out for our content.